Welcome to Essential Dynamics. I'm Derek Hudson, host of the Essential Dynamics podcast and creator of the Essential Dynamics framework. On this podcast, we learn about the principles of Essential Dynamics through deep conversations with interesting people. And I'm very excited today to have found John Munsell, who is, I think, an interesting person. I'm expecting a deep conversation. John, welcome and thanks for joining the podcast.
Thanks, Derek. I appreciate you having me on, and hopefully I will be interesting.
Well, sometimes people say that I ask good questions, and if you get a good question, you're probably going to come off as interesting. But I have checked out some of your stuff, and I do think you're interesting. I'm really excited to have you on, and I would love for you to just share a little bit about your background, and in particular, why you were interested in having this conversation today.
All right. Well, so I spent 16 years in financial services. And since you're a spreadsheet guy, one of the things that I built back in the early days, so I'm old enough to know what the original spreadsheet was, which was VisiCalc.
VisiCalc, yeah.
And then we went to Lotus 123, and I worked for a bank at the time, and we built a spreadsheet application that analyzed commercial financial statements so we could make lending decisions. And then fast forward, I moved to another bank in Florida, and they didn't have that tool. So I took our tool, and then I made more enhancements to it, built some macros in it. And then I called a friend of mine, because he and I both built this thing when we were in this other bank in Baton Rouge. And we said, shoot, let's see if we can't sell this to banks. And so we packaged it up. And then I had to go throw myself into the world of direct mail marketing and direct response copywriting. And so I learned all that, and we started to sell it to banks all over the country. And I learned a lot about marketing. And then in 97, when the web came out, I thought, okay, well, that's the new frontier. And it tickles a lot of my innate, I guess, interests and aptitudes. And so I ejected financial services and started a company that built web applications. We gradually became a digital marketing agency that also built websites and web applications. And then this thing called AI came out. And I thought, oh, that's going to change everything. So I sold off the agency side, and I spent a year working with CEOs to understand the problems that they wanted solved. I was thinking I was going to be a CMO, and it turned out they were more interested in AI. So instead of being a CMO that knew AI, I decided to really start teaching people AI, because that's what they wanted. And so since I went from a high of 40 employees down to a low of 2.5, I had to use AI to survive and thrive as a business, which is what led me to develop my own frameworks. And as I started to build those frameworks, people became really interested in those. And, off we went. And now it's been a wild ride, and every week gets wilder, I should say.
Well, it's fun to be part of so many sort of breakthrough changes.
Yeah.
And there's patterns, but they don't necessarily repeat the same way every time. And so, because you mentioned spreadsheets and then the web and now AI, that's just something that I've been thinking about. So let me put my hypothesis out for you. Okay. And then let's see what you can do with it, because I am very interested in the potential of AI to help people run their businesses better, which I think we have a common interest in. So, I started my career at Pricewaterhouse as a staff accountant, and in 1984, and we didn't have access to spreadsheets. We did not have access to VisiCalc. The clients did the calculations, and we checked them. And in fact, we had a contractor who operated a comptometer, and it was Trudy, the comptometer operator. So she'd bring this suitcase in, set it up on the table. Then we had to get her a phone book so she could sit on a chair high enough to run this thing, which looked like an old-time cash register, right? All these buttons. And she would add up the general ledger, to make sure that it added up because we didn't trust the computers back then. So that was pretty low tech. And then eventually we got our hands on Lotus 123. And I was involved in some of the early sort of work in the whole firm in Canada in terms of how do we use this tool. And for an accountant, it takes away like 90% of the drudgery of trying to add those numbers up or change a variable and run it through. I've done some extensive financial modeling and it's great and I love it, but I'm not sure that it's always been net positive for an organization. And I was thinking about, there was a time when we didn't work remotely, and we didn't even have a computer screen in a boardroom. And so the way you communicated your spreadsheet work was by printing it out and bringing stacks of paper into a meeting, which people didn't look at. And I found out that if I had a good summary page and a tall piece of paper, I could probably get anything approved because people they couldn't pour through the stuff. And what I've found since is that what should be integrated into an enterprise system in many cases, in many organizations all over the world, is still a one-off spreadsheet that might link to another spreadsheet, or maybe the link's broken, that needs manual updating. And so we don't have that integration. And I don't think that integrated computer system is actually going to run a business, but we're living way below our potential, even in that area. So then I see AI come in, particularly with the chat interface, which I love and which is super awesome. We have the potential to optimize all kinds of individual parts of the business and still not solve the problem that our organizations aren't designed for flow, that communication and information and value don't flow through organizations. And we're just getting better at producing those thick reports with AI, which at least now we don't have to print. We can just email them to people in a massive PDF. So that's a lot throwing at you there, but I would be interested in anything you want to pick from that and put it back to me.
Well, so I guess what I'm trying to grasp is when you originally said you had a hypothesis that you wanted to throw out at me, and I'm trying to understand wherein that was the hypothesis.
Okay, yeah, and where's the question? Fair enough. So the hypothesis is that these electronic tools can automate and enhance work that we do in a way that, before you use them, you can't even imagine in terms of your ability to understand and manipulate information. But I feel that spreadsheets didn't solve the main problem, which is that organizations aren't organized for everyone to understand how to do the best work as an entire system. And I think AI has the potential for local optimization of all kinds of job functions. And in that way, it would be like a spreadsheet for ideas. And so my hypothesis is if we don't do something different, instead of having 1,000 spreadsheets that run an organization, we're going to have 1,000 spreadsheets and 1,000 individual AI engagements, and we still won't know how to run our businesses. So that's my hypothesis.
Gotcha. So I would say a couple of things. What I try to focus on is, well, let me back up to your point to a degree. I think the problem that people, if they're not aware of it and they don't know how to deal with it, AI just gives you a ton of volume of information that people think, oh, look how brilliant I am. I just produced a 12-page document in seconds, when a 12-paragraph document would have sufficed. And so now what you're doing is you're shoving a massive amount of information to somebody else who's going to use AI to digest it into the 12 paragraphs, right? So, you end up creating a bigger mess. And so when you start to read all the research that's out there from all these consulting companies, I think everybody's kind of missing the point. And I think training, and this is where we're heading with our training has to kind of catch this before it gets out of hand. And what I mean is AI will give you this false sense of security and this false sense that AI is smarter than you. And so you abdicate your own domain expertise to this machine because it's so damn fast and produces massive amounts of volume of information. And so then you end up literally abdicating your expertise to a machine, and I think you minimize your usefulness to the organization. But if you are conscious of that as an employer, and you make sure that you're training people how to use more of their domain expertise and not less, and how to see AI as subservient to them rather than their master, you have to teach them how to think differently. And so the way I'm looking at it is, are you familiar with Each Akadise's book, Corporate Life Cycles, How Businesses Grow and Die and How to Head It Off at the Pass, basically?
No, but thanks for that recommendation, and we will link that in the show notes.
Yeah, so fascinating book, very complicated read. I read it 15 years ago, and I've used it to scale our business. And the chairman of our board is the one who said, you got to read this as you scale. So in that work, now he wrote this, I want to say in like 99 or 97, somewhere in that range, but everything he teaches is still true. And so he uses these 4 letters for basically the type of person that you are and the type of role that you play in the organization. You're either a producer, an administrator, an entrepreneur, or an integrator. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the producer is the guy that just likes to do the work, shove it, some food under the table every now and then, and I'll just keep working. The administrator is the person that likes to put rules in place, likes to follow rules, likes to put structure around it. Your accountant is going to be typically an administrator. The entrepreneur is the idea person, right? I don't like the fact that he used the word entrepreneur, but I guess he didn't have an I that collided with integrator. So we're renaming all those where we're calling the integrator the connector, because the integrator is the one who likes to create community, likes to get the team spirit going, likes to create culture, etc. All right. Now, we're all a mix of all of those things, and some we're a little bit stronger in than others. If you tested me, for instance, I would be very high on the entrepreneur side. I would be extremely low on the administrator side, because that stuff drives me crazy. We just finished the 2-day workshop for Tulane University, helping them stand up their AI governance. Governance in me is like baking soda and vinegar. I know I have to do it. I am competent at it, but I cannot stand it. And so fortunately, I have somebody on my team who loves that stuff. Okay. So anyway, my point is that if you think about what AI is, now AI is gradually taking over those roles. Okay. But so AI is going to do the producer role. So it will produce at massive scale. Okay. It will do the administrator role as long as you're giving it what rules to follow. So it will start to create that structure. Now, if it takes those roles and you're mostly a producer, then what does that do for you? That either replaces you or it makes you have more free time to explore those other areas, or you will be more valuable if you take your domain expertise and drive it through AI. So in other words, what you can't do is take the same workflows and shove it into AI. You have to be in a position to reimagine the workflows, because it changes things. It changes a lot of things. And so what I'm trying to do is teach people how to think differently with AI, because it will mesmerize you. And then because you're reading all this other stuff, you do think that this is why I hate the phrase human in the loop, because it makes you feel subservient to the machine. and
Mhm.
you should be the one who dominates the machine, even though it'll work faster than you, even though it has access to the world's expertise. You're the only one who knows what excellence looks like. And you have to learn how to drive excellence out of AI. And if you are able to make that jump, then I don't see how you lose your job. I see how you make the company infinitely more valuable. I think the ones that will lose their jobs are the ones that cower down to AI and become subservient to the machine, to where their boss says, "Yeah, the machine's better. We can let Derek go now." Right? I don't know whether that totally answers your question, but
No,
I'm so afraid that businesses don't see the opportunity to blend AI with the domain expertise of their employees, and they could take a B or a C employee and turn that into an A plus employee, because a lot of times the reason that an employee is, not really an A performer is because they they're either not applying themselves, or they're just not as fast as somebody else. But this, that you wouldn't have kept them around that didn't have some sort of domain expertise. But with a little bit of training, you can turn them into a powerful tool, a powerful employee, and somebody that contributes, right?
so I really like this, John, and I'm going to go back to something you said early in this part of our conversation. What you're trying to catch before it gets out of hand is abdicating our expertise to
Yeah,
machines.
yeah.
And so if I go back to the spreadsheet example,
Hmm.
um, I had this experience many times where someone's working with me would produce something, using a spreadsheet, and they'd bring it to me and they'd say, here's the analysis. And without looking at any other code, I'd flip through and say, well, this doesn't make sense. And they would go, oh, that's right, and they'd run off and correct it and bring it back.
Hmm.
And after a few cycles of that, they ask me, how do you do that? And and there's a few parts of it. One is, well, I don't have any trust in the numbers that you put in.
Hmm.
And not that I don't trust them, but I didn't see it being done. And so I'm not assuming anything. Whereas when I am crunching the numbers, I think that I'm, following a logical path, and, I'm not aware of my mistakes. And so, one of my suggestions was, we'll put it down and then, walk around the block and then pick it up and say, what would Derek see if he looked at this? And, that kind of works sometimes. And that was one of the things that one of my controllers did as a sort of monthly review exercise. Before I give the financials to Derek and he's going to find that one thing, I'm going to use Derek's eyes to see if I can find it. So when I take that and think about AI, it's, yeah, everyone has an understanding of the problem, or maybe they know they don't understand the problem. And they understand, like you said, what excellent looks like. And if they can step back from the material that's produced and say, that's a good problem statement, that's a good analysis, that's a good solution, that's excellent. Whether or not they produced it or AI produced it, the expertise is in play. But um, when we get, I think you use the term mesmerized,
Hmm.
and we say, wow, look, because if you put this in, that comes out, and we can't, it's a black box in between, then we surrender some of that judgment either on the problem statement or evaluating the solution. I think that's what one of the things you're trying to say, that you would teach people,
Yeah.
that there's a tool here, but we're in charge because we know what we want and we know when we've got it. So let's
Yeah.
be wise and judicious and a little skeptical and
Mhm.
make it show its work or whatever. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, completely. I mean, I can give you examples on spreadsheets, and I can give you examples on copy, but let's take it very simple. So we have what we call 10 levels of AI mastery. All right. And the first level is just, you ask a question, you get a response, you're blown away. Okay. you get higher up and you get into building agentic workflows, and then you get into managing agents, and then you get into managing people that manage agents. That's the 10th level. Most businesses that we deal well, let me rephrase that. Without exception,
Okay.
the business that we deal with, 80% of their employees are operating at level 2 or below. You have maybe 10% that are operating at level 3, and you'll have an outlier that's somewhere between 4, 5, or 6. They're not even aware of the other levels, let alone, on a quest to achieve that level of mastery. And so what ends up happening is they're so caught up in what AI will do and the speed at which it will do it, then they just look at it and go, that must be good, and they send it on. So they don't consume it, understand it, and say, this is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that starts with knowing how to interact with AI and knowing how to give AI what it needs to do an excellent job. And that's why, I mean, they abdicate that to the AI just because they're blown away at the speed and the stuff that it can pull together.
Mm-hmm.
And so we developed this thing called the AI strategy canvas, which, are you familiar with the business model canvas?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's framed up like the business model canvas, and it parallels it to a degree. Like on the top right corner of the business model canvas, you have customer segments. In the AI strategy canvas, you have target audience. All right. So when I'm working with an AI, I'm trying to build something. I'm going through all these blocks to say, what do I need to give it up front in order to get the best out of it? The bottom one, where you have revenues on the business model canvas, is where you have the request. That's where you finally ask it what to do. The left, where you have the expenses, that's where you have the rules. What do I have to tell it not to do and what to, kind of respect? All right. When we teach people how to use that and they start interacting with AI, they all of a sudden realize, oh, I haven't given it this. I haven't given it that. I haven't given it this. And then what they produce is subpar. Okay.
Yeah.
And then when they read it, before they've gone through the canvas and they understand it, when they read what AI puts out, they're just reading it really fast and like, wow, that sounds so smart. That's got to be real. But when I go through it and I show them why this 14-word sentence is not good, then they start to go, and I said, look, you got to step back. You are the expert. It's just fast. And all you're going to do is get mediocrity at lightning speed. We need to train them to think about, how do we get excellence at lightning speed? But they need to maintain their confidence in their knowledge. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And that is resonating with this parallel with spreadsheets. You can do a lot of calculations.
Yeah.
And they can ultimately not add a lot of value if you don't understand the parameters of the problem. I ran into this recently where I saw someone else's work, and there was an element of risk and prediction involved, and there were these different sections of a very complicated spreadsheet calculating numbers where the difference between the scenarios was so small and the noise around the future risk was so big that they didn't mean anything.
Really?
There was there's no more information provided, but there was variables you could plug in, and there was lots of cells, and you could do lots of analysis. But at the end of the day, you didn't know any more than when you started. And I suspect that that's the same with AI. I'm impressed with numbers. I'm impressed with words. There's a lot of words. I read a sentence. I wouldn't have thought of that. So that's value. So you're giving us this discipline. Now, one of the things that came to me when you talk about this is, if you took AI out of the equation, that's still a very good practice.
Mm-hmm.
To be very, very clear on what your inputs are, what your rules are, what your outputs are, what the audience needs. And so you avoid this mesmerization problem if you follow your rules, but also we're going to get better results even if the AI doesn't blow us away, because we've taken the time to focus on what we can focus on, because we have automated part of the task. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Yeah. And interestingly enough, like I taught 9 LSU professors how to use AI, even though they have their own curriculum. And one of them was like, I really like this strategy canvas because I'm using it in things other than AI. I'm using it in our organizational structure and stuff like cool.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's making some sense.
Okay.
But the way we designed it was to do 3 things. One was to help businesses and business leaders learn what AI needs. So if you're trying to develop an initiative, you know what departments need to be involved and how the thing needs to operate. So they can literally develop an AI strategy on different initiatives they have. The second is to provide a common language so that when you're building something and you need to involve IT and you need to involve HR and you need to involve PR, those people understand it at the exact same level, and they can say, oh, you're going to need me for this block, right? And so now you have this common language where everybody understands it, and you don't have that rub between IT and marketing where they hate each other because one thinks the other is an idiot, right? And then the last one is the prompt construction itself, to where you get the most out of AI. And you don't need to use that every time, but when you're trying to build a repeatable process or system, you need to go through the canvas so that you make sure that your prompts contain the right information at the right time using the right structure. And we have a whole structure, ironically enough, that came to me because I'm such a spreadsheet freak. I wanted to create a prompt structure that had containers and variables in it so that I could take that same prompt, use it for something completely different, and just swap out a couple of variables and execute a different process. So I don't have to rewrite the prompt from the ground up.
Okay. So I see that we're running out of time, John, very quickly.
Yeah.
And I'm just the machine, my intelligence, which I hope isn't artificial, is processing this quickly.
You're moving like a real human, so
yeah, I'm really enjoying it. So what I'd like to do is kind of cap this one off, and my summary of what you're saying is that we have to use AI to magnify our expertise and not step aside and let what appears to be expertise take that position, because we will not do as well. I want to come back in our next episode and let's get into the CEO's office and talk about things from the other direction. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Let's do it.
Okay. Yeah. So thanks very much, John, for sitting down with me today. How can people find you? Because I'm sure many will be interested in what you're talking about.
Sure. So they can go to our website, which is bizzuka.com, bizzuka.com, or ingrain.ai. That's the book I happen to read or write called Ingrain AI, which is available on Amazon. But it explains all of those frameworks to you, by the way. So it is a how-to book. It is not this is why it's important book. It explains everything to you.
Okay. Well, thanks very much. And I'm Derek Hudson. You can find me at getunconstrained.com. And until next time, consider your quest.